Hello, welcome to the Crafts channel. I'm Neti Love, and today I'm going to show you how to get started on making the hexagons for this fantastic heirloom stocking. As you can see, the hexagons form the bulk of the stocking, front and back, plus there's also lots of other lovely embellishments on here. We've got hellebores and mistletoe, holly and ivy, and then all topped off with some lovely decorative ribbons, bells and beads. You can find this pattern in the link below, and it's been made with Cygnet DK. It's a premium acrylic yarn, which actually is very sort of light and lofty, so it gives us a nice sort of soft feel as well. Let's get started with these hexagons, which as you can see are rather special, and the trick to these is that they're worked from the centre outwards. So there's a special sort of Slipknot cast on that I'm going to show you how to do. So let's get started. Just to show you how this cast on really works, and the trick here is that when you pull the yarn tail, it actually closes up the hole, so that disappears to get that lovely complete hexagon. So there we go. So that's what we're going to be making today. Now, we've used three classic Christmas colours: apple, cherry and white, but there are over 60 colours in the range, so you're bound to find one that's going to suit your recipient, and who would not be thrilled to have this fantastic stocking hanging up at the end of their bed on Christmas morning. So let's get started with this special Slipknot cast on. So I like to work from the middle of the ball usually, and this was nice and tangle free, and it's sort of smoothed out really nicely. You know, sometimes they can all be a little bit scrunched up and difficult to untangle. So I'm just going to pop this down here in my yarn bowl, and with a Slipknot cast on you normally have quite a long tail for this particular one, and I'm going to use my hands. So what I'm going to do is take this ball end, so I've got the tail end here, and I'm going to just wrap that over my first two fingers like so, and then I'm going to pull the tail end through, and that is my Slipknot loop that I'm going to cast on through. Now, the pattern for the hexagon is actually really straightforward, but we do have a couple of setup rows. So we're going to put this slip knot on my double pointed needle and get started with the cast on. Now, the important thing is that this yarn end is on the left, so that this is the slide. So if I was to pull it out again and pull on this end, it slides closed like so. So we'll keep this yarn tail on the left hand side. So we'll grab one of our double pointed needles. Now you're going to need a set of 4 to make the hexagons, plus a 4.5mm needle to cast off with as well. But that actually can be any 4.5mm needle. So you're going to need a set of 4, and this is actually a really nice size. It's about 13 centimetres, which is 5 inches, and it's just the right size for working a small piece. You can get longer, obviously, but I found these were really great to work with, and the yarn sort of slid across them really nicely with just the right amount of grip. And the other thing to say is that I did have a go with steel needles, and it was very slippy. So if you've got some bamboo needles, I think you'll find this a lot easier. So now I've got this slip knot, I'm going to put it on my left hand needle and tighten it up, keeping it to the left hand side. And the first thing I'm going to do, my setup round 1, is to knit 1, purl 1 3 times into this slip knot to give us 6 stitches. So knit 1, and then because I'm going to purl the next stitch, I need to bring my yarn to the front, insert the needle through the back, wrap the yarn around, and that's my purl stitch. So I need to do another knit 1, purl 1, yarn to the back for my knit stitch, through the slip knot, knit a stitch, yarn back to the front, through the back, purl a stitch, and then my last knit 1, purl 1, yarn to the back for my knit 1, knit 1, yarn to the front for my purl 1, and then those are my 6 stitches cast on. So now I've got 6 stitches here, as you can see, and I'm ready to distribute those onto another 2 double pointed needles. And you can see here that my slip knot is working here to pull that ring nice and tight when I need to. So grab 2 more double pointed needles. So I've now got my 6 stitches. I'm now going to slide them to the opposite end so I can transfer them onto 2 stitches onto 1 needle, and then 2 stitches onto the next needle. Now, this is where you want to make sure that you don't get your needles twisted up. So there we go. So I've now got my round set, and with double pointed needles I find it really helpful if you can try and hold them in a grid at all times. Now at this point it is a bit floppy, but once we get the next setup round work, this will all sort of tighten up and feel a lot more secure. To work in the round we want to join the round, so I'm just going to slide these 4 stitches on the 2 needles that are in effect adjacent to each other, so I can swap over the first 2 stitches to join my round. So I'm going to lift first one from the left hand needle onto my right needle, and then pass the first one on my right needle over my left hand needle. There we go. So I'm back to 2 stitches on each needle, and now I'm ready to grab my 4th double pointed needle so that I can start working in the round. That was our setup round 1, basically knit 1, purl 1 into the ring, and then distribute them over your needles and join for working in the round. So the next round is knit into the front and back of each stitch all the way around. So we're starting with 6 and we'll end up with 12. So I shall just do that. And with double pointed needles, again, I find it easiest if I take my new needle and place it under the one that's kind of the last needle that would have been used, and then work into that so it's over the yarn. So we're going to knit into the front and back of this first stitch. So that's the knit. I think I've split that a little bit. Let me just fix that. And then sometimes it might be easier to turn it over to be able to work into the back there, like that. And then bring that stitch through and then take that off. So now I've got 2 stitches where in fact I only had 1 before. We're going to repeat that in every stitch all the way around. So I'm going to move that stitch I need to work closer up to the tip, knit into the front, knit into the back, and then lift that stitch off that needle. So that needle then becomes my spare needle, and I just reorientate the 3 needles that I had so that I'm ready to start knitting into the front and back of my next pair of stitches there. When you come to a point where you're changing needles, it's quite useful to work that stitch a little bit tighter so you don't end up with too much of a gap. So now we've got 4 stitches on each needle, plus we've got our spare needle, and those were our 2 setup rounds. So the next thing that we do is essentially just knit 1 round, and every alternate round is a knit round, and there's only 7 rounds in the pattern, so we're going to get through this really quickly. What I'm going to do actually at this point, because it can be a little bit easy on these knit rounds to lose your place, is to pop in a stitch marker just to hang at the point where the round joins. Obviously when you're doing your increase rounds, you don't need one, but so I just tend to sort of pop one in there and then move it up as I need it. So we're going to do a round of knit, and you can see how my yarn is actually almost holding the needles in place. It's really lovely to work with. So we'll just knit this round, get my grid set up, get my stitch marker hanging down the bottom. Just slide those up there so they're more out of the way, and I can see more easily what I'm doing. You can see it's a little bit of a juggling act to start with. Get that yarn tail out of the way and knit all the way round, making that joining stitch between the needles just that little bit tighter. Give it a little tug. So that's the first 4 stitches. Swapping my needles around, sorting out my grid, and slide those up to the top. Make sure that's in the middle. Make the first one a little bit tighter. Just knit all the stitches off the needle. So there we go. So that's another round complete. And if I just lay this down here like this, I hope you can just see, maybe not, that we have got a hole here in the middle. Now, the pattern will tell you to sort of tighten your hole a little bit at this sort of point, but I'm just going to leave it there so that we get more of the effect when there's more to see. So we've done our first knit round, and we're now starting an increase round, and it's a really straightforward pattern repeat. It's basically knit 1 and then increase into the next stitch with knit, yarn forward, knit. So we're going to do that twice across each needle. So now I'm going to move to the next needle and repeat the knit 1 and then the increase of knit 1, yarn forward, knit 1 into the next set of stitches. So get organised, move that up here a little bit, get those needles more to the tip, those stitches more up to the tip. So that's knit 1 and then knit, yarn forward and then knit and lift that stitch off the needle. Knit the next one and then knit, make sure I don't lose my stitch here, yarn forward and then knit. And that's that needle done. Reorientate everything. Now do remember to lift that stitch off, because if you forget to, you'll find you have too many stitches and your pattern won't work out. And I suppose you can, if you didn't want to go back, knit 2 together, but it's always better to go back and fix your mistakes, I think. So last one, knit, and then increase with a knit, yarn forward, and then knit again. And then we have completed the second round. Now, so here, hopefully we can see this hole much better that we have. And this is where the magic happens with this Slipknot cast on. Because if we now pull on the yarn tail, not the working yarn, but the yarn tail, that will bring that all together to make a nice neat hexagon working from the inside out. And this actually is a really nice method because it means you don't have to work in rows and then seam up the side. So it's sort of a seamless way of working in the round, and the hexagon shape will appear when we cast off. So my next round would be another knit round. We can do that. And so this is where I'm going to move my stitch marker up again, because it's easier to do it this way. Before a knit round, that is. And then I'm going to just knit all the way round. So this is another odd numbered row in the pattern. There we go. So that was our second knit round, and it is growing, I promise you. In fact, I'm just going to trim this yarn tail now because it is kind of getting a little bit in the way. Just leave it long enough to be able to weave in. It's time to start my next increase round, which is really similar to the first one. The slight difference is just that you do knit 2, rather than knit 1 at the beginning. So it's knit 2, do the increased stitch, which is knit 1, yarn forward, knit 1, and then knit 1 to finish. Knit 2, and now my increased stitch, knit 1, yarn forward, knit 1 all in the same stitch, and then knit 1, and that's the repeat. Knit 2, increase, and then knit 1 to finish. There we go. Now, if you find that you might have an extra stitch, it may be because you are inadvertently going through one of the stitches on your as you go round and change needles, so keep an eye out for that. If you work that round followed by another knit round, you'll be up to 12 stitches on each needle, and our hexagon will be looking something like this. Here is our hexagon that's now got 12 stitches on each side, and we've just finished our last knit round, so we're going to do the very final increase round, and that again is very, very similar in that it is now knit 3, do the increased stitch, and then knit 2. The hexagon's looking rather fine at this point, and our needles are so much easier to work with as well. So knit 3, do our increase of knit 1, yarn forward, knit 1, all into the same stitch, being careful not to lose our stitch, lift that off the needle, and then knit 2. And that is the final increase round repeat. So knit 3, into the stitch, knit 1, yarn forward, and then knit 1, and then knit 2 to finish the stitches on that needle. And carry on round. And trust me, these shorter needles are so lovely to work with this yarn, which is, it's got a really nice sort of silky finish to it actually. So we'll do our knit 3, increase, and you can see you can sort of whiz into that really rather quickly once you've got the hang of it. And this is a really brilliant portable project. Just grab your ball of yarn and you can do these anywhere really. You need to make about 20 of each one. So I'm here doing my knit 3, and then my increase, and then my last knit 2, and then we're back at the stitch marker. So our final round is basically a knit round, so that's really straightforward. And here we are in our final round. So that's the end of the basic hexagon pattern. Now you can't really see it sadly at the moment, but trust me, it is in there and we'll discover it as we cast off. And as I mentioned, to cast off we need a slightly larger needle size. This is a 4.5, and we're going to cast off purlwise, and that means that you need to cast off the 2 stitches to begin with purlwise, and then move your yarn to the back to be able to lift the stitch over, otherwise it just gets in the way. So we will bring our yarn to the front and cast off purlwise. So purl 2 to start with to get your stitches that you need. And then take the yarn to the back so you can lift that stitch over. Now you might want to cast off, what you might find is if you cast off a little bit loosely, you might end up with a slightly frilly edge. So just bear that in mind and be prepared to either work a bit more tightly or maybe even stay on the same needles. So yarn to the front because we need to purl one. Purl the next stitch. And then yarn to the back to be able to lift that over. Yarn back to the front, purl a stitch, yarn to the back to lift one over. Now this is always the tricky bit where you either start purling away because you've forgotten you're meant to be casting off, or you end up with your yarn in the wrong place. So I'm using the tip of any needle that's close to do the casting off for you. It doesn't really matter which one. In fact, I might move that one back out of the way a little bit, just till we need the stitches. So cast that one off. And you can just see that needle slipped out of my hand there, and that's because there's no more stitches on it. And you do have to watch out, that very last stitch can be a little bit tricksy. So we've now lost one of our needles, and you can see the hexagon shape emerging with the corners there. So I'm just going to carry on casting off, and just before the very last cast off, we're going to work a little bit more of a border so that it has a neat join. So you just carry on to the next needle as if there was nothing in the way, which there isn't. Now you may be wondering how you put the hexagons together, so we'll talk about that in a moment. And they're actually joined in rows, so you build up your rows and then you build up your stocking, and we'll also have a very handy diagram showing you how to put it all together. And then here I've only got one needle left, so I'm trying to hold it out of the way as I do this last cast off of that edge, that part of the round. And now we've only back down to 2 needles. So this is the last bit of the cast off. And you can see my edges are all forming really rather nicely, nice and flat. So that's cast off a little bit tighter on this slightly larger needle, a 4.5mm needle. And we'll carry on with our just purl one, cast one off. So now we're down to our last few stitches on this purl cast off edge. And when we get to the end, we're going to do a nifty little manoeuvre. Okay. Okay now, so we'll just do this last one like so, and we're going to keep the stitch on this needle because you can see here now, I can take my stitch marker out now. Don't think we need that one anymore. Oh, don't snag. So here's our lovely hexagon. But you can see this edge here is a little bit untidy. So we're going to, and there's a bit of a gap as well, so we're going to join that with a couple more cast off stitches. And so we're going to pick up the first cast off stitch, and we're going to make sure we go front to back, and we're going to purl that one. and cast it off again. Now that is me playing around here by holding my yarn too tight. So that's one, and we're going to do the same with the next stitch as well. So front to back, pull that stitch with the yarn in front, and then take that to the back and then lift that over. And that actually helps to join that edge there, so that now when we weave the end in, you won't see it. So that's our hexagon finished, and you can see how in the middle it's got a nice tight closed up hole, and you don't have to worry about seaming up any row ends at all. So let us just fasten this off, leaving a tail, and then we can just fasten that off as normal, and then weave that in. Now what we want to do when we weave it in is make sure that it doesn't interfere. I'm just finding my darning needle here. We don't want it to interfere with any of these upper stitches on this edge, because they're going to be very useful. They're going to be used when we actually join up the hexagons into rows. So we're just going to weave this end in along the back here. So one stitch, so not at the main edge. You can go a little bit, you can take the back of the stitch if you like, but you might also like to just go a little bit further down. There we go. Now, of course, the back is all going to be hidden when the stocking's made, and it's got a very nice lining. And as I said, you would also weave in this yarn tail after you've pulled it tight to make sure your centre of your hexagon is nicely organised. And then if we just take a little look at this stocking, I'll just show you a few more details. So now we know how to make these fantastic hexagons, and also the same Slipknot cast on is used to make these insert diamonds, which you need to kind of help produce the edge shape, because the hexagons just wouldn't fit. And you can see that it's been made. You would join it in rows, and actually the first row is folded over so that you can then sort out the lining. And it's really simple. You just basically use the whole stocking as a template for your piece of fabric, minimal sewing, and insert it after you've made up all of your hexagons and put that inside, and then you can carry on with the decorations. Of course, it's entirely up to you if you want to just leave the stocking completely plain or add these decorations as well, but there's a whole host of really useful techniques. And as I say, this yarn, this Cygnet DK, has been really lovely to work with in this project. Really soft and just gives such a nice finish, and light without, even though it looks like quite a large item. So I hope you've enjoyed that video demonstration here on the Crafts channel. Do come back and see us soon. You can find all sorts from sewing to paper crafting to crochet, and we'll see you again soon.
If you've been inspired to create, please share your makes with us in the comments section below. And if you've enjoyed videos by the Crafts channel, hit the like button. Want to see more of us? Then click subscribe. See you next time.